Welcome to the Galloway Law Podcast. My name is Thomas Galloway. Jerry Anderson is the Dean of Drake Law School. His specialties are environmental law, property law, administrative law, and natural resources law. But today we spent our time talking about legal education and how it is changing. This episode will be especially helpful for anybody who is considering going to law school. So if you enjoyed this interview, please subscribe and share with a friend. And now, to the interview. So before we get too far into it, can you tell us a bit about how you got into legal education in the first place?
Sure. I graduated from Stanford Law School, and then I clerked for a judge, which is a common thing to do after law school to give you additional training and really a behind-the-scenes look at how judges decide cases, and a very good training in terms of your writing and legal analysis. And then I worked for a law firm in Kansas City for several years doing environmental law, but I was always attracted to the deeper issues in law that clients don't want to pay you for. When you're a lawyer, you pretty much have to do the things that serve the client and not what interests you. And so I got into teaching at the University of Oklahoma, first of all, and then made my way to Drake in 1991 and have been there ever since.
Gotcha. So what are some of the main changes we've seen in legal education since you started?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. Technology has really changed the legal practice in general, and that's filtered then down into what law schools do. So when I started, computers were not really used even that much, and if you needed to go to trial and you had a bunch of depositions and a bunch of documents that you had to have ready for trial, you paid a young attorney like me to read every single page and index it and look through every single document and try to put them in some order. Now you can just scan all those things. They're searchable, and you don't need to pay those new attorneys for the same kind of work that you used to pay them for. And that's just one example of the way that technology has changed the way law firms operate. And so as a result, we had a fairly big shakeup in law hiring in the about 7 or 8 years ago. And that has really caused law schools to rethink legal education in general. For Drake, we want to make sure that, given the fact that technology has changed the practice of law and is going to continue to impact how legal services are rendered, we want to make sure that our graduates are not only capable of interfacing with that technology, but also are part of the movement that uses technology in new ways to serve their clients. So it could be that 5 years from now you'll be able to write your will or change your will on your cell phone. How can we make sure that our graduates are part of developing that technology and making sure that it is safe and effective to serve those clients equally as well as the old-fashioned way of doing business. So that's one thing, and then the second thing is recognizing that there are so many unserved legal needs in our country, and so the statistics are really shocking about the number of people that, for example, get divorced and they don't have legal representation and they can't afford it. And we're not even talking about low-income people. We're talking about middle-class people that really can't afford to pay a lawyer, $250 an hour to just to do the simplest sort of legal things that they need done. And so I think we will see the development of new types of legal degrees that are narrower in focus, that are easier to get. You don't have to spend 3 years learning about everything from how to bail somebody out of jail to, the tax code, if all you're going to do is real estate closings. You don't need to know criminal law. You don't need to know, the tax code. If you're just going to do this one narrow thing, then we can create a shorter, cheaper curriculum and certify you for that one particular type of job. I think that's coming. The Bar Association is probably not going to like it, but I think it's already being experimented with in a couple of states. And so as a law school, we need to be prepared for that and be prepared to be part of the process of educating those new practitioners.
Right. As far as having more narrow degrees and specializations, it would put a little more pressure on students to kind of know what they are interested in. So what are some ways that students can learn about a certain area of law and feel confident that specializing in that in law school is good for them in the long run?
Well, that's another thing that I think we have to be prepared for, is that the modern student wants to have the learning process be throughout their career. And so you're going to get out and you may think you want to do wills and trusts, and then it turns out that you really get a passion for children or criminal law or whatever it might be. I think we have to be prepared to have a certification process that will qualify you with an additional add-on layer to your learning. And we have that now in the form of what's called the LLM, a Master of Laws. But even that is a little bit more cumbersome, I think, than most lawyers want. They're going to want it delivered online. They're going to want it delivered in a fairly short packages so that they can get it done efficiently in a fairly short period of time. And so we're going to have to continue to explore. And this isn't just law. I mean, that's the case for just any kind of profession that you go into. The world is changing so quickly now that education can't be just about 4 years when you're in your teens. I mean, it has to be about lifelong adaptability.
Right.
So I think we have to just adapt as well.
Right. What are some day-to-day activities that you have to do as dean?
Day-to-day activities?
Yeah.
Well, I got into the legal academics because I like teaching, and unfortunately, that's the smallest part of my job now. But the good thing is that I spend a lot more time with alumni, and that has been eye-opening, because it's sort of like when you're a professor, you get to see the first chapter of a lot of books.
Right.
And you don't get to see what happens to those books, at the end. And so now I get to go out and see our alumni doing incredible things and realize the great variety of jobs that they go into. And so you see a Drake Law grad that's, her job consists of standing up in court in the criminal court of Los Angeles County every single day, prosecuting, criminal defendants. And how different that job is from the guy on Wall Street that's doing international financial, stock work for a financial services company, making sure that they're meeting the securities regulations in Brazil and in China and so on. And then how different that job is from the woman who is one of our grads who does patent defense for the Humira drug for AbbVie Pharmaceuticals. So, it makes you realize that there are so many different ways that people use their degree, and it all starts with this same kernel of education that we're giving them, and that then blossoms into all these different types of legal work. So, as I say, I spend a lot of my day interfacing with alumni, also with the central administration on campus.
Right.
And that's been really joyful as well, because you realize that there are a lot of other really talented people on campus, and there are a lot of ways that we can work together with the law school and other parts of the university to do good things together.
Right. What do you consider some of the best practices of being a professor of law? What are some things that every professor should know and should do in their classrooms?
Well, and I've been on the hiring committee for our faculty for many years, and now as dean, I'm automatically on it. And so, the good thing that we have done is I've been here for 25 years, and every year what we look for are people that not only care about their research, because there are lots of people like that, but we want them to be good at research, but we want them to be good in the classroom as well. And I think that starts with caring about it, caring about your students, caring about whether they learn or not. And remarkably, there are a lot of people in the legal academy that don't do that, and so if you do that every time you hire new professors, then you end up with a faculty that is really good teaching faculty. And so I'm very proud of the fact that we have a lot of really good professors, and there are a lot of different ways that they go about that. And some of the younger professors are more willing to use modern pedagogical methods that are different from just standing at the podium and lecturing. But even some of our older professors are embracing, the need to give more feedback more often, I think is the biggest thing that we are pushing now, because the studies show that you retain so much more if you get tested on it quickly and then have repetitive testing throughout the semester and actually throughout your legal studies. And so we want to constantly, it's certainly not enough to do what you were, just teach the way you were taught 30 years ago. We have to always consider the scholarship on pedagogy and make sure that we are trying new things, adapting our teaching to the modern learning styles and making it relevant.
Right. When you went from undergrad to law school, what were the main differences you noticed?
Well, I loved law school, and that's probably why I'm still here. But the thing that I noticed was that all of a sudden you are with a bunch of really smart people that are motivated and are interested in the world. And studies show that the main motivation for going to law school is not making money. I mean, there are, and certainly there's nothing wrong with making money, but most of the people go to law school because they want to make a difference in the world. And so that means that you're with a bunch of really cool people that are thinking about exciting things, that are wanting to do things to help the world. And so to me, that was the main thing I noticed, is that, wow, this is a group of really talented, really engaged, really people that are interested in helping the world.
Right. For those who are nearing the end of high school who might be listening and are considering law school in the future but need to decide on a major for undergrad, what do you consider some majors that really help in law school that they can do in their undergrad?
Well, surprisingly maybe, the answer is that you can go to law school with any major. And you would be surprised, our most successful graduate whose name is on the library and whose statue is down the hall, Dwight Opperman, was a music major undergrad. And, we have had actually quite a few music majors that have done really well in law school. And I think it's because they have to pay very close attention to detail. A C is not the same as a C sharp. They have to be very, and that's what you have to do in law, is you have to really pay close attention to the text and exactly what that text says, not what you sort of gloss over it. And so, and there's, I think, other things about music that might help. But typically we say that any major that requires you to write a lot, because lawyers, no matter what you go into, you're going to have to communicate, and mostly communicate in writing. Having the opportunity to also talk in front of other students, but that can be in, presenting a project in class or whatever. But physics majors, biology majors, often they go into patent law, and do really well. But you don't have, biology majors might also go into environmental law and use the biology major that way. So there are a lot of things that you can major in that will prepare you. But no matter what you major in, even if it's music or biology, those are not typically associated with a lot of writing. And so if you're going to major in biology, make sure you also take some classes that require you to write.
Right. So a few questions about your paper you wrote in 2004 about critical legal studies.
Mm-hmm.
And could you explain briefly that concept and a bit about its origin?
Sure. Critical legal studies has been around, since the 1970s. I think blossomed in the early 1980s. And basically, the idea is that we use words in the legal system like equality and fairness and justice, but they mask a system that is not fair or just. And it really requires students to tear away the curtain and look behind the scenes and see what's really happening. And so, I guess a common example would be in the system of divorce law, dissolution of marriage. The statutory standard might be equitable division of assets. And everybody says, well, that's fair, right? That's wonderful. We want equitable division. We want it to be fair. But then you look at the statistics and you see that after divorce, the men are typically 30% better off economically, and women are typically 30% worse off, 5 years after marriage. And the result is, because of the way that equitable division is being administered, some of the assets of the marriage are not, in the earning capacity that typically a wife may give up to raise the children, while the husband is the primary wage earner and is working his way up the corporate ladder. That's not taken into account in the equitable division, so that it's not really equitable at all. And so I think it's a useful way of saying, it's not enough to just say that we're going to do this fairly. We have to really analyze whether on the ground, in reality, the system results in fair treatment.
Right. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of students learning deconstruction?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a useful thing, no matter, our grads go on to do such a wide variety of things, as I said, but not always in law. And so they may be, the president of Drake University is a lawyer. One of our grads is the head of one of the major multinational corporations in the world, and he's not doing law on a general basis, he's doing business, basically. But all of those people would say that their law degrees help them because it helps them engage in critical thinking. Mm-hmm. And critical thinking starts by saying, don't take this at face value, right? Just because somebody says it's fair, ask, show me the evidence, right? How can we test that to make sure that it really is fair? And then what are we going to do with those results? And the result is that, for example, the president of Drake University, Marty Martin, approaches problems that way. And you can tell that he approaches it like a lawyer. And he will say, don't just tell me there's nothing we can do about this problem. Why not? Show me the evidence and let's dig into it and see what the data show us, and so on. And so I think it does create a mindset that you're not going to take things at face value without really digging in to see whether or not they're true.
In the paper, you mentioned that the movie The Matrix could serve as a somewhat tongue-in-cheek introduction to CLS.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about the relationship between those two?
And I'm thinking that reference might, I realize my cultural references are becoming dated, but I'm glad to know that some modern students might still know the movie and understand it. But certainly the idea is that the public sees a certain picture of a particular legal system, whether it's the criminal justice system or, as I was saying, the divorce system or whatever it might be. And they see that as reality because that's what they're being shown. That's the picture they're being shown, right? And this is the image that we want you to see. And it's only when you're able to, as Neo, was able to do, is to get behind that and see that's actually just a facade, and behind that it's masking some pretty seamy things. That you see, you start to question, well, why is it that the percentage of African Americans in our prison system is so high? What is it that is really behind that if our system is supposed to be fair? And then you start to see, the imbalances in the system that might lead to that result. And so, I thought The Matrix was a good way of sort of just introducing people to the concept that there might be more, that there could be a curtain of an image of a justice system that if you look behind it, you might find things that you're surprised about.
Right.
Yeah.
So the paper was written in 2004, as I mentioned, and what have we seen happen to CLS since then? Have we seen it taught more or less or about the same?
Well, I think for a while it acquired a sort of bad connotation of being associated with Marxist critics. And I think that's unfortunate because the question was always, well, yes, these things break down into there is a lot going on behind the scenes, but it's stuff that capitalism requires to go on and so on. And I really reject the fact that it doesn't lead you to Marxism. I'm certainly not a Marxist, believe strongly in the capitalist system, but that doesn't mean that you can't try to make it better, right? And that there are boundaries to it that need to be imposed. So what I see in the legal academy is that people might be using this technique, this way of critical analysis, without really identifying it as critical legal studies as much. It just becomes more of an accepted part of what we do.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.